Good morning, everybody. You are listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I'm your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and our special guest is Ned Scanchi. Thank you so much, Ned, for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Yoshi. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk today and go through some of the topics that we've discussed.
Yes. I really appreciate that. So, guys, you are in for a special treat because we've had a lot of people come in to the show and talk about investing, but we've not had a developer ever come in yet. We've had guests that come in that have done spec home building, but not anything to the extent of Ned's experience. So I'm very excited. I have the pleasure of, we had the pleasure of having lunch like a week ago, I think.
Yeah, we had lunch a week ago, and then like 6 months ago, it was a good lunch and had a lot of conversation about what you're doing, which I think is super fascinating.
Thank you.
Author, inventor, radio personality. So, that's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is specifically working with the community and working with city and zoning when doing new developments. There is so much that goes on before a building ever starts to go up. I had no idea because I never did development, and before I started getting in real estate, you'd just be driving down the street one day and you're like, oh, they're building something. But that process could have been going on for years as far as they're building something today. It looks like, oh, today they're building something, but they may have been rezoning, they may have been doing all sorts of stuff to get that. And right now what's crazy is how much construction we see all over Salt Lake City, right? It's booming, there's so much stuff that's happening, and so Ned is going to share a perspective of what that's like to be able to go in, find a piece of land, rezone, for whatever is necessary to be on there. So if you don't mind, Ned, let's dive into this. What have you seen developers do that works well when working with cities and communities on a development?
Sure. So it's interesting. When I first started getting into development, I approached a mentor of mine who was a big developer, and I said, so hey, I'm looking at rezoning this project to try and make this work. And his initial response was, don't rezone. It's not worth the brain damage or the time. I said, okay, but I wanted the experience, I wanted to go through it. So we started looking at this land, and I think the first part is you look at the existing zoning, find out what that is, and then you find out what you're wanting to build, what your vision is for the project, and you look at what zoning would fit for that. So, and then one of the most important steps of this is working with the city. When you get a property, what I would recommend right out of the gate is go and talk to the city planners or the city council and find out what their vision is for this area of the city.
Got it.
Are they looking for more housing, more commercial buildings? What type of zoning are they looking for? And see how that fits with the neighborhood. Gotcha. So communication, really a developer and the city and the community really should act like partners. Got it. And as they work together to come up with what is going to work well on this site. Yes. What is going to contribute to making the community better, and how does that fit with the city's vision? Gotcha. So I think one of the important things as developers, you start off, one, talk to the city, and it's important to listen. The city planners and the community and the city often look at developers as kind of these selfish, greedy guys who come in here and who don't care about anything more than building a building, making some money, and getting out. Right. And I think our attitude generally as we've approached development, our group, is we're long-term owners. Yes. We want to hold the property, and so we're really interested in how that area and the city develops. Got it. What's going on there to create that community. Gotcha. That's so true because, every time I talk to people that have a new development going up in their neighborhood, they're always wondering if it's going to be high density, and that means a bunch of new neighbors, which means more traffic, and so many people are just comfortable with what they know. They're afraid of change, and they're set in their ways, and
And we're a growing city, whether we like it or not. We're a growing city, and with more population coming, sometimes it's needed, right? It's what's needed, and that may mean there will be more traffic because more people are moving here. How oftentimes is needed taken in consideration when a city? Because I went down the road once. Had an opportunity to acquire some land, and the idea was to build a 12-plex on the space. And the city said that we could only do a maximum of 4 doors. So they said you could do 2 townhomes, 2 duplexes, or a 4-plex, right? And at the price that the land was selling for, that didn't make sense to buy the lot. And this was downtown, right? So we're like, well, 12-plex is so needed, and needed wasn't something that they really cared to hear that day. They said, you could always fight your argument and go through the zoning process, but it does take 12 months before you get a reply. And I didn't want to buy a property to find out 12 months later I couldn't do it. So we walked away on that particular transaction. But how oftentimes you get to that 12 months and they're like, yeah, you're right, it is needed. Does that happen much?
Well, I can tell you about my experience. So we were working on a lot in Sugar House. And so we had it was at 2 half-acre lots.
Okay.
We were trying to take them from an RMF 35, which is residential zoning, allowing for 35 feet of height. We wanted some higher density, just like you did on your project.
Yes.
So the first step for us was we met with the community council chair.
Got it.
Talked to him and said, look, this is what we're thinking. And then we met with the community council land use committee.
Gotcha.
Proposed our idea, say, hey, we'd like to do 18 units on this site.
Yes.
Currently it's zoned for 8.
Got it.
So we have 10 extra units.
Yeah.
So we heard from them very similar concerns to what you mentioned. Hey, we don't want more traffic.
Yeah.
We don't want more density. So a lot of these concerns. And the important thing is, as a developer, as we look at this, what you hit on was really just key is that people are afraid of change.
Yeah.
And I think we have to approach that with that understanding and say, we know people are afraid of change. And so if we try and ram something through the community,
Right.
it's not going to go well.
Right.
And we can talk more about that later. But if we go in and we listen to the community, we find out they're concerned. Okay, we're concerned about traffic. We're concerned about parking. Well, how can we tweak our project to accommodate some of those things? Can we add more parking on our site? Can we add more bicycles, or can we add things that will help accommodate that? So that's what we went through. And I'll tell you, the land use committee that we met with and the community council gave us a thumbs down on the proposal.
Got it.
So the process is you would go to the community council, and then you go to the planning commission,
Okay.
and then it goes to the city council.
Gotcha.
So we got a thumbs down at the community council.
Got it.
But we took their feedback and went and tweaked our project, and we pushed forward to the planning commission.
Okay.
So we met with the planning commission at that point. We met again with the community council, talked to them, but they still said, hey, we're still concerned about these things, and we don't feel resolved. We're working to do it. We're trying to deal with parking and traffic, which were their main concerns. We go to the planning commission. And I guess I should say too is we felt that this vision we have for this area, it's an area that we know well. We know the community well. We know the direction it's going. Like you were talking about downtown, more density is coming.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of helping people get comfortable with that change.
Right.
And so we pushed on to the planning commission. At the planning commission level, we didn't get an approval by the planning commission.
Gotcha.
They're not the final vote in the end anyway. The city council is.
Okay.
But the planning commission can give a recommendation.
Got it.
So we meet at the city council. We listen to their concerns again, and the community's there, and we listen to them. And we go back and tweak our project a third time.
Got it.
And maybe at this point it's maybe a 4th or 5th time that we're tweaking the project.
Okay.
And then we move forward to the city council. So we meet with the planners, we talk about what our vision is, what the city's vision is for it. And we're all knowing that we need more density
Right.
in the city.
Yes.
And so our take for this particular parcel is let's keep density where density belongs, in inner city areas that have high, good traffic and good public transportation. So in the end, we did get approved. This is a year long, probably a year plus. Maybe we're 18 months.
Oh, got it.
Between meeting with the community council to finally getting approval by the city council.
Gotcha.
A lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, a lot of listening.
Yes.
I guess that's what I want to emphasize is people want to be heard, and that's
Yeah.
part of the change process.
Right.
Is having people express their concerns,
Right.
hearing them, and then talking to them. I think in life, persuasion is the best method to get things done.
Right.
So if we can talk and I can understand your concern about what this development will be, and I can persuade you that we're gonna address that
Yes.
in the right way, and that this is the best path for this property. Then in the end, that change happens, and the community will absorb that change, and they'll be okay with it.
Got it.
Part of that change takes time, and that's why I think we had 18 months in this, is because
Yes.
it takes time for people to feel comfortable with something.
I was going to ask that, yeah. Yeah, I was actually going to ask that. Do you think that the reason why it takes so long is it goes through little tiny changes, and by the time you get to the final thing, they've already gotten used to the idea now? Do you think that's part of why it's...
I do think that's a big part of it, yeah.
Interesting.
And I think with the iterations of the plan, if we go back and you can't incorporate everything the community wants, but if you can incorporate some things and you give them a buy-in, some kind of ownership in the project, where they see it finished and they're like, yeah, I was the one who said I wanted more trees on this project.
Right.
Or more parking in the back, or a setback at a certain distance. So, and in the end, the product is better.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And you can't please everybody. Like, I'm a big Apple fan, right? I love the iPhone. I love how it syncs to my iPad. I love how it syncs to my computer. And then I talked to a buddy who hates Apple products. And I'm like, it's like the greatest product. How can you hate it? And like, I just hate it. Like, well, I truly can't please everybody.
and that's very true. And you will hear, in part of our zoning process in different times, I mean, the community wants to be heard. Sometimes they see this opportunity to come out and speak at a community meeting as their chance to get on their soapbox.
Yes.
And so there are some things that people bring up. At one meeting we had on a commercial pad, someone came up and said, hey, this street that runs in front of you, I almost got hit on that street. And really, well, we can't control traffic on that street. We don't control the lights,
Right.
stop lights. Why are you here
Right.
talking about this rezone? And I guess really it's just he saw an opportunity to come and talk.
Right.
Well, one that's kind of funny about this is
Yeah.
we had a building that was next to a shopping center, and that shopping center had a sloped roof, and snow would slide off that roof.
Oh.
So we're trying to get this zoning on a new building. And
Yes.
this guy comes out and says, hey, I want you guys to do something about the snow that's falling off this roof over here. And so just out of nowhere.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, we have nothing to do with that.
Right.
This whole conversation has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the response is, like, okay, let's talk with that property owner and see what we can do.
Right,
People
right.
want to be heard.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's interesting. He just like, I mean, yeah, that you always have nothing to do with that roof and snow falling on it.
Right.
It's amazing. Awesome. Okay, so what have you seen that doesn't work? We're talking about people being heard and listening. What doesn't work?
Well, the things I've seen that don't work is I guess just the opposite of those things. Is developers who don't listen to the community and are trying to push a project through that doesn't fit in that community. So when there's not a partnership, there can be very the developers in the city and the community can feel like they're at loggerheads often, and sometimes developers will say, hey, the community is crazy. The city is super difficult to work with. This is what I want to do with my property.
Right.
I paid money for it. I own it.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone else telling me what I can or can't do with this. And that's when I've seen things get stalled out for years and years.
Wow.
Where nothing can be done because the developer is being stubborn. And then the minute you get aggressive with the city or with the community, you lose their interest.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have people in the community who say, over my dead body, right?
Right.
Like, I don't want more apartments here. I don't want this little,
Yeah.
Restaurant torn down to make way for an apartment building or some other big development.
Right.
Like I said, the process that we went through, communicating early with the city and the community is key. If you bypass those and leave them out of the process, or don't let them feel heard, I think the honest truth there is you won't be a developer for very long.
Got it.
It's so costly and expensive to do the process and to not get your project through.
Right.
If you keep trying to ram it through, it's not going to work, and you'll be out of luck and out of business.
Yes, and then you'll have to move.
Yeah.
Out of state.
And you out of state.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yes. Actually, do you think, here's a random question, kind of came to me as you were saying that. I think that the population boom growth that's happening right now in Salt Lake City is new to Salt Lake City. Yeah, we relatively, like maybe within the last, 5-ish, 10-ish years, I feel like we've really started to increase our population growth. The numbers, state that. How about a place, I know you develop in California as well. How about a place, and I don't know what part of California to know if it's a more populated city than Salt Lake City, but do you think, let's take Los Angeles for example, because we know that's super populated. It might be easier to rezone there in high density because people are already used to high density versus here where we're just getting used to it. Do you think that process happens quicker somewhere like that?
Yeah, so the one project, or the projects we have some in San Francisco and in Sacramento, most recently in Sacramento, but I would say that was super easy to get a high density project approved there.
Wow.
The city was on board, the neighborhood was on board.
Got it.
And it just happened. I think that is true, is that people are accustomed to the first high density project in a neighborhood is going to get a ton of resistance.
Gotcha.
And opposition. But if you're the fourth one in the neighborhood,
right. That makes sense.
No big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal.
So like in 20 years, here it'll be easy.
Yeah, I think in some cases. In downtown already, we're seeing a lot more density there.
Gotcha.
And it's good. We need the housing.
Yeah.
The housing costs keep going up, rents keep going up.
Yep.
And the affordability is a challenge right now. So we need the density, and we talk about NIMBYism, not in my backyard.
Right.
People say, yeah, I want low-income apartments, and I want more density, but I want you to do it 5 miles away from my house.
Right.
But we all, as we work together as a community, we all need to have an interest in making that work and having those houses. So the project I was working on in Sugar House, something that came up is that we want you to build these buildings, and we don't want you to build more density, but we also want you to make it affordable for someone working at the bookshop or the library nearby.
Right.
And slightly tangenting is like, as a developer, they talk about build affordable housing. And in the end, as a developer, we build buildings to house people.
Right.
So they will be affordable to someone.
Yeah.
We're not designing buildings that are unaffordable to 100% of the population.
Right.
So they will be rented, otherwise we're out of business.
Right.
But we do take into account, like, how can we make studio units which rent for less than a 3-bedroom unit or something like that.
Sure.
But there is a lot of hoops that we try and jump through to try and accommodate this making it affordable and new. And you hit on something too when you talked about that fourplex.
Yeah.
You want to make a 12plex. Is the landowners, they want to be paid
Right.
a certain price, and as a developer, you're looking at that and saying, well, I can only pay this price if I get 12 units, 18
Right.
units, 50 units on this site.
Right.
And so you try to design a project that you can pay the price that they want,
Yep.
and get a project that makes a fair return. And I will say too, getting off on some few different topics, but development doesn't have the huge returns that people often think
Sure.
there are there.
Yeah.
I think there's been a few projects that have gone through the time, energy, and risk that were involved.
Yes.
And we finished with it, and I'm thinking, man, we should have just bought an existing building, because the
Right.
returns were about the same
Right.
on a risk-adjusted basis.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. There's been some flips that I did that I calculated. I was like, I may have made $12 an hour doing that.
So true. So true.
Awesome. Okay, so what do you think the community and city in general? How do you think they view developers? And it depends, I think, on who you ask. But obviously, generalizing it as if you go out there and ask a bunch of people, what do you think their view on developers are and the city?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you look at movies in the media, right?
Yes.
So one of my favorite movies is a Pixar show, and it's with the guy, the house that floats up in the air.
Okay.
What's that called? He's with the balloons. Up, yes.
Oh, thank you, Bailey.
It's Up.
Okay.
So the beginning of that, the show is about these mean developers are coming to take over this old man's house, and it's in the middle of the city, and he's lived there his whole life, but
Yeah.
he doesn't want to leave, right?
Right.
So developers are portrayed in the media as generally kind of uncaring, greedy, cutthroat.
Got it.
And so I think the community in general, when we say, hey, we want to redevelop this site, they think, oh, great. This guy doesn't care anything about us.
Yeah.
We've lived here our whole lives. We've raised our kids here. This guy's just swooping in from California or some other place, buying this property. He's going to build something here that doesn't fit, but yeah, and he's going to charge major rents and put our local businesses out of the area and get national tenants in here. And
Yeah.
so they just don't see that their interests align. And then I think at the city, oftentimes, especially in the planning departments, and in the planning departments, these guys are working hard. They're understaffed and overworked.
Sure.
And then they're trying to keep developers who are trying to look for any way to further their project. Like,
Right.
They don't want to be confined by the city's guidelines. Just say, okay, I don't want to be 35 feet high. I actually want to be 40 feet high. I don't want to have to build a wall a certain way. I don't want to have this setback. And so I think they feel a lot like a parent or a babysitter
sure.
who's like, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. Like
Yeah.
downtown, they have the historic district, and I just saw they have a rule down there that if a brick building is not painted, you can't paint it.
Oh, wow.
So I've seen recently one historic building that was painted, and about a month later, they were sandblasting off all the paint.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's an example of somebody saying, "Don't ask, don't tell. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do this. I'm just gonna paint this building, and if they catch me,
Yeah.
I guess I'll then take it off."
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the attitude of the planning commission, or not the planning commission, but the planning departments, is that there's an adversarial relationship. Like, this guy's trying to take advantage of me or trick me in some way with the
yeah.
developer. Which is why, in the end, it really needs to be that partnership. We really
Yes.
need to work together as a community and a planning department and as developers. Because developers are really just entrepreneurs. They're looking at something, they're creating something where something didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Trying to create value. And that value should make the community better and the city better, and also return a fair return to the developer as well. For
Gotcha.
the risk and
Right.
activity.
Yeah, because developers obviously don't want to do it for free. There's a cost to buy the land,
Absolutely, yeah.
and then there's a cost to do the development, and so if you break even, it's not worth doing.
Right.
It's got to be...
Right, and then
Yeah.
at that point, where are we getting our housing from?
Yeah.
Where are we going to get shops from? And we love our little walkable communities. Where
Yeah.
are those going to happen?
Right.
It's not. So we have to have the ability to make a return and make it profitable for the developers as well.
Right, right. Have you ever, that's an interesting story with the sandblasting of the paint. Have you ever heard, and I never have, of anyone, I don't know, maybe not a full-blown development, but maybe like building a house without getting permit? They're like, you know what, I'm just going to build this house. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had, I've seen houses that are half built
Wow.
that they just started doing it and they didn't do the setbacks right.
Right.
They didn't have the height right. In fact, there was one in my, just kind of an East Sugar house
Yeah.
that they started building, they framed it up, and then it was blocked. They couldn't do any more. The city came in and stopped them.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it sat there for about 2 years
Whoa.
and just fell apart.
No way.
And I think that the people are thinking, well, the city and the city would rather have a house here, even if it doesn't conform exactly to the requirements, than an empty lot, dilapidated house. But they don't. We have to abide by the rules. And so yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that in other places as well, where people have tried to slide something by and gotten caught. Yeah,
amazing.
Crazy.
Wow, that is crazy. All right, so what would you like the community in the city to know about developers, and how would you like to change the way they see developers?
Well, with the collaboration, I think that's what I'd like to see, have them realize is, one, that developers are their neighbors. They're just like people, right?
Yeah.
So we're just people, and then that we're not all these multi-millionaires, right?
Right.
There's the people who are investing in developments often are just investors.
Yes.
It could be like teachers unions and these other groups that are investing in these projects, or they can be people who've worked in other jobs their whole life, and they have a couple $100,000 saved up, and they decide that they want to be an investor in a development.
Yeah.
So it's not, the pockets aren't that deep. These people are just people.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the best they can, and they are interested in the well-being of the community.
Right.
They are interested in making a product that improves the community and is one that will sell, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're talking about apartments and the different things that people are developing, and there's a lot of feedback from the community on what type of units to develop, and that's fine and good. In the end, though, like if you have a bakery, you are going to bake bread that sells.
Right.
And regardless if someone says, I want all rye at your place or all sourdough,
right,
you want to build what sells.
Right.
And you don't want to have inventory just sitting on your shelves. And that's the same thing for any development. You want to build buildings that have tenants, commercial tenants in them, restaurants, shops, or apartments that have people in them. So the goal is to build something that will be a viable product.
Yeah.
So so developers are just people. Everyone's trying to make a product that will sell and work well.
Right.
And they're not. There doesn't need to be this opposition. There can be a more collaborative process than there traditionally has been.
Got it.
And I get that some developers are guilty of causing this relationship to feel this way.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like anything, right? There's good doctors, there's bad doctors. There's good real estate developers, there's probably not so good real estate.
Right,
It's like anything, right? And so, that totally makes sense. And it's interesting, I never thought about that too, because going back before we cut to commercial, you said how obviously the housing's needed, and our values here in Salt Lake are becoming more and more unaffordable, and that's just because of supply and demand. Mm-hmm. If we don't have supply, then demand goes up and costs go up. But if we have more supply, then the demand isn't there, and then the prices will go down. I never even kind of thought about, high density. That would obviously, the more high. I'm not saying that everybody wants to have now more high density, but obviously the more high density there is, the more supply there is, probably the less demand we'll have, and then we become more affordable opposed to less affordable.
Yeah.
So I never even looked at it like that. Okay, cool. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, you're going to share with us a nightmare story. I know a little tiny bit about it, and so this is a development nightmare story. I've had my nightmare stories on fix and flips, and you lose a few, bucks. I can't imagine, on a bigger project, the holding costs and taxes every year and all of that good stuff. So you're not going to want to go anywhere. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Did you know that Snap Leash is the most convenient leash in the world?
That took a second to
That's right.
go. It was like circling.
Convenient leash in the world.
Awesome. All right. It's going great. Thank you, Ned.
For you and your pup. Whether you're
So
out
that's
in
my
the store in
voice.
the park, or possibly a walk through the city.
Do you know, have you seen my snap leash before? Oh, okay.
The snap leash is the
How's that going, by the
perfect
way?
leash for you.
It's not bad. You know,
And convenient.
the company
Converted to
thankfully
7 types
takes
of
care of
leashes,
itself
making the snap
financially.
leash the most
We're not,
convenient
me and my
leash
two
in the
partners,
world.
we're no
Whether
longer
leash
having to
you
feed
know,
it money
seven
out of
leashes
our
in
pocket
one.
because
With
it's
the snap
generating
leash
enough to
having
keep
appearances
it
on the
going.
Today Show
It's
in
just
New
now
York
growing
City,
it where now it gets to pay us back.
TV47 in
So,
Dallas, Texas,
yeah,
and
it's been a slow
ABC
process
for
because none of us
Unlimited Utah.
know
You
the
are
pet
definitely
industry
gonna
well,
wanna take a
but we're
peek
all
at what the
entrepreneurial
rate is
enough to
about
figure
and what
out
Snap Leash can do for you
how
and
to
your best
slowly
friend.
grow.
A little more convenient
So,
for
that's
you and your
it.
pup.
So,
And visit
how many partners do you have?
www.snapleash.com
And then how did you end up with
today.
partners on that?
One's a buddy, and then one's an attorney. Yeah, I'll tell you more. Sorry, we're getting ready to go live again. All right, we are back. You're listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I'm your host, Yoshi Shiraki. Our very special guest is Ned Scanchian. He's talking about real estate development today, which is really exciting because we've had a lot of guests in here that do real estate investing, but never had a developer before. So it is time for the nightmare story. You know, Ned, the reason why I like the nightmare story, you know Trevor Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor and I used to office together, and we would share nightmares that were happening in our career because we found that if I can share with Trevor a nightmare I'm going through, then he can learn from my mistake and not have to make it, and vice versa, right? And so the nightmare story is designed more so as a learning experience story. We call it the nightmare story because a nightmare happened, but at the end of the day, everybody out there who's listening, you know, can learn from that experience. And so it happens to be a segment of the show that I learn a lot from, from all my guests sharing all their nightmares. And you know, you've known a lot of them. Matt Strong came in, shared his, he had an apartment in Tooele nightmare story that turned out to be, you know, a good, in the end, it turned out to be good. But yeah, if you don't mind diving into this nightmare story, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, so let me start kind of in the middle of the story. So part of this rezone on a project, so this was not me doing the rezone, although I was involved with the some of the landowners as a consultant. But so in the middle of the story, we start with this rezone, and there's this public meeting. So the city planners say, hey, let's get everyone together at the elementary school, and we're going to talk about this project. So what the developer had done, which I think was a mistake out of the gate, is, and this is, you know, it's part of a strategy, right? So
Yeah.
it depends on the situation you're in. But he said, look, I'm going to ask for about 2 stories more and about 20% more density than I really need. So out of the gate, he said, I want a 5-story building. I want 200 units.
Oh, wow.
And he said, and this is my strategy. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to say, this is what I need. And that way, when we take it back to a 3-story building and 100 units or something like that, that everyone will say, oh, good, thank you, Mr. Developer.
Yeah.
We got this. So,
Interesting.
but the mistake was that the community saw that and thought this guy is out of touch with our community.
Yeah.
He has no idea what we're all about with our homes in our neighborhood. We do not want a 5-story building
Right.
down the street here.
Yeah.
And all the traffic and so all these things.
Yeah.
So they have this meeting at the elementary school, and I show up. I'm not speaking at the meeting or doing anything. I'm just there to observe.
Yeah.
But I walk in the room, and I walk in 10 minutes before, and it is packed, and the tension is palpable.
Wow.
I'm thinking like pitchforks and torches here.
Oh, man.
These people are so fired up.
Yeah.
So then the planner gets up and describes the project, and you know, people are just like mulling and just waiting for their chance to talk.
Yeah.
Then they open this question and answer period, and people start expressing a lot of opinions about the zone change and what that would mean, how the neighborhood doesn't need that many more units, and that building would be totally out of place, and mistake number 2 that I think this developer made was he got very defensive.
Oh.
And so he started arguing back with the community.
Oh, geez.
Essentially telling them, like, this is not your property.
Oh,
You know,
my
with
gosh.
all due respect. You know,
Yeah.
that phrase, with all due respect, this is not your property and you don't get to tell me what to do with it.
Right.
Which is ironic in that he's there asking for support to
Right.
build these other things, right?
Right. Oh man.
So he gets very defensive and has these exchanges with people in the community that as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Right.
You are torpedoing this whole project.
Yeah.
And he's done it in such a way by asking for too much
Oh.
and being very aggressive with his responses that even people such as myself, who was a member of that community, who wanted a redevelopment on that site,
Yeah.
didn't want what he had,
Right.
but wanted something new.
Right.
It made it very hard to support the project. And so he ends up putting the community, the planners, the city council,
Oh, no.
and himself in a very hard position because nobody wants to support his development.
Yeah.
The city can't support his development even if they wanted to
Right.
because the community would blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after this meeting, there's this mulling around, and it was just tense. And I'm going around and talking to different members of the community, and people at this point are like, "No, those dilapidated buildings that are there now, we want those to stay." Like, are you serious? They're like,
Right.
yeah, better than what he's got going.
Yeah.
And it's that thing about change.
Yeah.
People find it hard to change.
Yeah.
So he owns some land in this, and he's trying to get a few more pieces of land as part of his deal. So he's
Gotcha.
trying to do, he has some other owners, he has options on their land. So he's paid for those options.
Yeah.
He's got his own land, and he's paying the taxes, the carrying costs of that.
Got it.
He's got money tied up in the two options with these other owners, and his project is going nowhere.
Right.
And so in the end, the city does this big study on the site. They hire a consultant to come in, so we're another year
Oh my gosh.
into that.
Wow.
And then they get to the point with what the community feedback has been, and with this consultant, that the project that they have envisioned is essentially what's there but new.
Gotcha.
So they're saying, we want a one-story building with local tenants, but we want newer buildings, which doesn't pencil at all
Right.
the acquisition of these lands. And so we're then in another year. So it's like he ends up holding this land for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Yeah, so just an insane amount of time to be holding land. And it's a tragedy in that if he had approached this,
Yeah.
if he'd come to the community and said, we're looking at redoing these buildings, we think this is a good fit for the community.
Yeah.
How about that? Then they would have been buy-in from the community. If he'd approached, even if he'd just been not so aggressive in the meeting,
Right.
if he just said, oh, I hear you, I understand. Yeah, we don't want 200 units here and
Yeah.
more traffic out next to this elementary school. And no, yeah, we a 5-story building would be way too big for this building,
Right.
this area. Just hearing people.
Right.
And it probably cost, well, I know, in the end, he sold his property
Ah.
to another group of developments because he had become kind of a
Oh.
pariah, and no one wanted to work with him.
Got it.
So another group of developers came in, and they took a much different approach.
Yeah.
Worked with the community council, the city, and things are happening finally.
Nice.
So that's the, I guess that's the nightmare story. Is that from the developer side, he's losing money and time and all just the bad press that he got from it.
Oh shoot.
And then from the
Yeah.
community's left with it's taken a lot longer for them to get a product or a building in that area that fits for what they're wanting to do with some
Right.
neighborhood commercial and some apartments above it, so there's more housing. And so the way he approached it and the way this story laid out, it was kind of this lose-lose-lose.
Yeah.
And now it's finally taking a turn, and we're getting to something good for the community, good for the city, and good for the developer.
Right.
But yeah, people don't like change,
Yeah.
and they don't like to be, I don't know, bullied or pushed around. They don't like
Sure.
to feel like someone's just taking advantage of them.
Absolutely.
And as you know, with the residential real estate, a person's home, like that's
Yeah.
close to the heart.
It
That's
is very close to the heart.
You raise your kids there, you grow old there, and don't mess with that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And people, the same is not true of commercial buildings where you have businesses that are turned
Right.
over. It's just not the sentimental connection.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And it's funny because his whole point was to go 500 so that if they negotiate him down, he gets what he wants. But then he just got defensive.
Well, yeah, and then people got mad. I think if he'd come out with like what he thought was reasonable.
Yeah.
Because I think what happened when he overplayed what the size of the development was, people thought he had no idea what the neighborhood was.
Right.
He was just some guy from some other place who said, "I'm going to build a 5-story building there."
Right.
And so they're like, "You don't get our community. You don't care about our community. You don't understand our community."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, his strategy totally backfired. I think if he'd come out with a more reasonable development,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have had to back off. He would have just said, "This seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Don't you think so too?"
Right.
And
Right.
if not, let's talk about it.
Exactly. Exactly.
He couldn't defend the 5-story building
Right.
because, as far as a persuasion, as we talk about it, it's like, "Oh, so why do you think a 5-story building fits here?" It's like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't. I guess."
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So.
Shoot. Yeah.
Anyway, bad strategy.
Bad strategy. Okay, good lesson to be learned there. All right, so we're going to take another commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to be asking Ned some questions on what somebody out there who's listening, who has a dream to potentially one day be a developer, how they should get started. You know, growing up as a, growing up when I was a kid, probably high school, I had chatted with a friend of mine, and we were kind of, we were probably like juniors, seniors, and discussing like what you want to do when you graduate from high school and go to college and what you want to be. And his dad was in real estate, and so he told me, I vividly remember this because I didn't even know what it was at the time. He goes, "I want to be a developer," and I was like, "Okay, you're going to develop something," because the word developer means develop, but I didn't know what that meant as far as like developing real estate. So it was so interesting because he'd been introduced to developing through his father at a young age, where I never, was introduced to that. So when he said he wanted to be a developer, I asked him, I was like, "Well, what is that?" He goes, "Oh, I want to develop communities and houses, and all of that good stuff." And so, lo and behold, I had no idea that that was somebody's dream. So I'm sure someone out there is listening thinking, "Yeah, I've wanted to do that too." So we're going to ask Ned some questions on that, so you're not going to want to go anywhere. We're going to take another quick commercial break, and we will be right back. Okay. Oftentimes, not often, every show,
Hi, I'm
there's
Dr.
usually
Shiraki, the author of the book My Body's Just for
the
Me.
guests
The book
want
written for
to
children
be contacted, like Matt
educate
Strong.
children
He does
on the
business and hard
prevention of
money or whatever.
childhood
I didn't know if you had any reason. If not, I won't ask it.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, perfect.
As a tool to help
Yeah.
FBIs in an easy and
And like
innocent
Trevor,
way
he wants to
help
buy
children
houses. So yeah, give my
understand
number out, right?
how to
So
speak
that's
up
why I was
and
like, Ned, I don't know if Ned has
I have
anything
been
that he
invited
want anyone to
numerous
know.
times to put things you
I was
taught
trying
to
to think
discuss
about
the
that. If
importance
someone
of good
had, like,
communication with your child in regards to abuse,
yeah.
and also
That's probably okay.
discuss
Okay.
how the book My
I
Body's
think we're
Just for
defining
Me is
it.
a great tool for every parent
That's fine.
when having
Yeah.
that
Do you want a
tricky
website?
conversation with their
There-
children.
and
For more
if not, we
information
don't
on
have
the
to do
book, My
anything.
Body's Just for Me, please visit www.protectourangels.com
No, we don't have to. Okay, perfect.
today.
Perfect.
And remember,
We won't.
when
Sorry,
we
that's a little
focus on
weird, but-
prevention,
No,
less
it's
will have to
and I
focus on
literally,
rehabilitation.
you're the first person I'm asking this because you're the first person that I don't know if there's a benefit for, you've already got your thing at a level that us residential people need, if that makes sense. All right, guys, we are back. This is K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. And we are talking development. And for some of you out there, some of you guys are listening, maybe you're in high school, maybe you're in college, and you've always thought, how cool would it be to put together a community, develop a housing community or whatever it is that you want. And you have no idea how to even get started, like what that even looks like. So I'm going to ask Ned. Ned, for the listeners out there, can you share any ideas if somebody wanted to start to learn how to become a developer? What can they do to get started?
That was a great question, and I want to encourage anyone out there who's interested in this, because we live in communities, and designing and building communities is very important to how humankind lives. And so I love that we're thinking about more ideas. I mean, we have affordability issues right now. We have this pandemic, which is going to change how a lot of things are done.
Yeah.
And we need smart ideas to create communities and places that people can live and they can be happy and successful. So I encourage people out there to get out there and use their ideas and to make things happen. So there's development incorporates a lot of aspects of business, and so if you had an interest in any one of these aspects, you can start participating in development. There's architectural element of obviously building the buildings. There's the construction element of constructing the buildings. There's the financing element of putting together financing and loans and underwriting the project and making sure you can afford to build the building and it will return a profit. There's the relationship aspects when you're working with your investors and partners, and then also that relationship as you're working with the community and the city. So there's a lot of different avenues you can take to getting into development. I do think one of the best ways is to try and work for a developer.
Sure.
I always recommend learning on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
So if you can try and get into work with a developer, or somehow you could work for a bank in their finance department for doing commercial loans. There's the MRED at the University of Utah is a great program. That's a Master's of Real Estate Development. It's a great program if you're interested.
Interesting. Got it.
So, so my own story is I kind of came at this. This is a family business, but I grew up working on the properties that our family had. So taking care of the lawn, sweeping the gutters, different things like that.
Yeah.
And just being around it, you kind of get a feel for how the buildings function, and how you treat your customers with your renters. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved. But yeah, reaching out to a local developer, taking them to lunch, talking to them about their experience, and then looking for opportunities. I think some people ask me okay, some people think there's like a secret sauce.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, if you crack the code.
Yeah.
And for a number of years, I'd say there is no secret sauce. You just have to go out and make it happen.
Right.
And I was talking to Joel Stice, who we both know, and I think that this was the change. I was like, well, the secret sauce is your relationship and the trust that you build with people. That's what changes. That's what makes deals happen, and that's how people. Most of the deals that we have done, generally we're approached by somebody who knows us and trusts us and says, I've watched you, or I know you guys, and I trust you, and I'd like you to help me develop my parcel, or manage my property, or I'd like to invest in a project with you. So that your integrity and your reputation, and that's the secret sauce, I would say.
Right.
That everything else is a commodity.
Yeah.
You can underwrite the same deals with the same numbers. You can find the same financing. You can hire the same contractors. You can hire the same architect. Everything else is a commodity, but it's that reputation that's important. So guard that. Yes. And make sure you treat people fairly, and you can make $1 tomorrow. Yeah. If you don't take advantage of someone today to make an extra $1. Right. You can make that tomorrow, and you will if people trust you.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I remember when I first got started in flipping houses. I had bought rentals, but it's a completely different game. You really have to make sure your numbers are right if you're going to sell this in 3 or 4 months, 5, 6 months. I remember offering to work for 2 different flippers for free. Like, I didn't want them to pay me because they didn't need an employee. But I wanted to learn the things, like you said, surrounding yourself around it. I called them up and knew them. They knew me. We were cordial and friendly. I was better friends with one than the other, and I literally went in and said, hey, I would love to come work for you guys for free. I don't know what you need help with, but I'm not looking for a paycheck. I'm looking for experience and be able to, in return, do whatever it is that you guys need. And they were super humbled. Neither of them wanted to have me work for this. That just doesn't feel right, you working us for free. But they were very generous from that day forward with their information. But I would have still worked for them for free. No. So I love that you say that. Surround yourself, go work for someone. And I'm not saying you should work for free, but if you're hungry enough, like I was, sometimes you offer yourself to work for free.
Well, and I think from my side of the table, if someone approached me and said, hey, can we talk about this? I love talking to people about this. I love mentoring people. And I found that to be the case because I have had mentors.
Right.
People that, I remember at the time I was in college, and I remember asking like, what are you getting out of this? Like, what do you get out of mentoring me?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I enjoy it. And now I'm kind of on the other side of that, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
Like, I love seeing someone else be successful.
Yes.
And I love mentoring people.
Yes.
And it's that feel good,
Yeah.
Whether it makes more money for me in the future, it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
you're happy to talk to people and share your experiences and ideas.
I love it. Yeah, I feel it's fun. It feels good. It's fun. It's like, I don't know. It's funner than playing golf to me. I like golf, but I'd rather mentor someone. Oh, awesome. Okay. So you also own multifamily buildings, apartment buildings. We've already discussed this. Can you share any tips or ideas for somebody who wants to get started in multifamily? They may have a single family rental and they think they want to go big. Any tips with that? Or maybe they don't have anything.
Yeah, well, so there's like the first one is you're going to learn a lot on your first one,
Mm-hmm.
and so buying it right's important, but it also costs you a lot of time if you wait to purchase. So anyway, so I guess we're going for is start with duplexes, fourplexes, and go from there and keep growing bigger.
Perfect. Okay, no, that's great. I'm going to ask you one last question. We've got about a minute left here on the show, and it's about mindset. So in order to accomplish massive success, your mind has to be right. You can't be a negative thinker and still continue to press forward. What do you do to keep your mind strong?
Something I repeat to my kids and to myself, and everything will work out.
Yeah.
I don't get caught up in a moment.
Yes.
You get to look long and say, you know what? Everything's going to work out, and nothing in this moment is going to affect that.
Got it.
So you keep this, be patient.
Yep.
Everything will work out.
I love it. Perfect. All right, guys. Well, you have been listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. Ned, thank you so much again for joining me today and sharing.
Thank you. It's been fun.
I really appreciate it. I hope everybody out there has a spectacular rest of the day.